There is one rule the powerful live by. They never chase, never beg, and never explain. They understand something most people don't, that power is silent. Because silence, when mastered, is not weakness, it's control. It's the quiet assertion that says, I don't need your approval to exist. And in a world addicted to validation, this makes you untouchable. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote that a wise man should appear calm even when he is not, that he must learn to control both speech and silence to influence others. Silence, in the Machiavellian sense, is not the absence of sound, it's the presence of power. It's a tool that hides your strategy, protects your dignity, and forces others to reveal themselves before you do. Let's break this down. The 3 principles that make silence your ultimate superpower. Never chase, never beg, never explain. 1. Never chase. The law of pull, not push. Machiavelli understood a timeless truth about human nature. People do not value what is readily available. They crave what is scarce, distant, and slightly out of reach. The moment you chase, you declare yourself lower on the hierarchy of power. You signal that the approval, attention, or time of another has more worth than your own. And once that imbalance is established, once others sense that you are moving toward them while they remain still, your influence begins to erode. The one who chases always loses control of the frame. When you chase a person, an opportunity, or even recognition, you unconsciously announce that you lack it. The act itself becomes proof of deficiency. Desperation exposes you, not through words, but through energy, the subtle but unmistakable scent of need. The more intensely you pursue, the more invisible your value becomes, because human perception operates through contrast. People do not look up to those who need them. They look up to those who can live without them. Machiavelli captured this perfectly when he wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." In other words, people do not see your intentions, they only see your posture. If your posture is one of pursuit, of convincing, of trying to be chosen, they will instinctively rank you below them, no matter how justified or pure your motives may be. The powerful understand this law and reverse it entirely. They never chase, they attract. They design environments, habits, and behaviors that naturally pull opportunities toward them. Their power lies not in pursuit, but in presence. They stand still with quiet assurance, radiating the confidence that what they want will come, not through begging, but through gravity. They behave as if what they seek is already theirs, or that it's unworthy of their energy to pursue. This deliberate calm, this psychological detachment, becomes magnetic. It draws others in without a single word being spoken, because in silence, people sense something rare: control. Think carefully about this dynamic in your own life. The moment you stop chasing someone's attention, they begin to wonder why. The moment you stop explaining yourself, they begin to question what you know that they don't. The moment you stop reacting, you seize control of the rhythm of the exchange. You dictate the tempo, and suddenly they must adjust to you. This is not arrogance, it's mastery. It's the art of influence through restraint. The powerful do not need to convince, because their composure does the convincing for them.
Machiavelli taught that influence is not born from neediness, but from mystery. The less you reveal, the more others imagine, and the more they imagine, the more they project value onto you. The uncertain mind amplifies what it cannot see. When you remain silent, composed, and self-contained, others begin to fill in the gaps with their fantasies. Fantasies often far greater than the reality. This is how you gain invisible leverage. So learn to step back. Let silence do what words cannot. Let others wonder what drives you, what occupies your mind, what your next move will be. If something or someone drifts away when you stop chasing it, take that as clarity, not loss. It was never aligned with your power to begin with. But if it returns, it will do so on your terms, drawn not to your need, but to your gravity. That is the foundation of true power, the art of pull, not push. 2. Never beg. the psychology of dignity. The second law of power is one that many break without realizing. Never beg. Because begging, in any form, is not just a gesture of need, it is the slow death of dignity. To beg is to announce to the world that you have surrendered the most sacred possession a person can have, your self-respect, and placed it at the mercy of another. It is to say, you have the power to define me. I will wait for your approval to feel worthy. And once you give someone that kind of control, it is nearly impossible to reclaim it. Machiavelli warned that those who depend on the goodwill of others are building castles on sand. Goodwill is unstable. It shifts with interest, with circumstance, with emotion. People may show you pity when it benefits them, but when the tide of fortune turns, that pity becomes indifference, or worse, contempt. Machiavelli wrote, "The promise made was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." In plain terms, when people no longer need you, they will forget everything they ever owed you. This is not cynicism. It is realism. The wise accept that loyalty built on sympathy is fragile. The moment others sense you need them more than they need you, they hold the leash. But understand this clearly. Begging doesn't always take the form of kneeling or pleading. Begging often wears a disguise. It can look like over-apologizing for being yourself. It can sound like explaining your worth to people who have already decided to undervalue you. It can appear in the form of silence, not strategic silence, but fearful silence, the kind that comes from wanting to avoid rejection or disapproval. Every act that says, "Please see my value," is a quiet act of begging. It's an attempt to outsource validation instead of generating it from within. The Machiavellian alternative is not arrogance or coldness. It's negotiation. Where the weak beg, the strong bargain. They never ask for something from emotional need. They offer something of value in exchange for mutual benefit. This subtle difference is everything. To beg is to depend. To negotiate is to stand as an equal. When you beg, you lose respect. When you bring value, you gain leverage. The powerful understand this. Respect is never given out of pity. It's earned through presence, composure, and contribution. People may help those they pity, but they only admire those they respect.
Every time you beg for love, for attention, for understanding, you're handing over the remote control to your emotional state. You allow others to determine when you can feel peace, when you can feel joy, when you can feel secure. They press a button, and you react. This is emotional slavery. The foundation of power is emotional independence. It means wanting something without being ruled by it. It means being able to walk away, not because you don't care, but because your dignity weighs more than your desire. This doesn't mean you must be detached from all human connection or ambition. It means that your sense of worth is not conditional. You can still desire success, love, or recognition, but you refuse to degrade yourself to get it. You know that begging for what can be earned through self-control is a betrayal of your own potential. Because once you start pleading for acceptance, you begin living by other people's mercy, not by your own mastery. So stop convincing people of your worth. Stop over-explaining your intentions. Stop trying to be understood by those who benefit from misunderstanding you. Your silence, your withdrawal, your restraint, these become your answers. They communicate strength louder than any words ever could. Let absence speak. Let the weight of your self-respect remind others what they lost when they underestimated you. Machiavelli would tell you this truth plainly. Pity fades, but respect endures. The world remembers not the ones who begged to be seen, but the ones who held their ground until the world had no choice but to notice. Never beg for what discipline, dignity, and silence can earn you. 3. Never explain, the art of strategic ambiguity. The third and most misunderstood rule of power is this: never explain.
because every time you explain yourself without necessity, you surrender something vital, your mystery. You hand people the blueprint to your emotions, your reasoning, your vulnerabilities. In essence, you give them a map to your weaknesses. And once they can predict how you think or feel, they can manipulate, challenge, or diminish you with ease. Explanation, though it may seem like a gesture of clarity, often becomes an act of exposure. Machiavelli understood this truth deeply. In The Prince, he warned that a ruler must guard his intentions like a fortress. Not because deception is always required, but because opacity creates control. He wrote, "Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot." This principle is not only about warfare, but about communication itself. When you speak, speak with conviction and finality, not to justify, but to assert. And when you choose not to speak, let your silence be absolute. Never explain halfway. Half explanations are confessions disguised as clarity. They invite interrogation, doubt, and disrespect. In power dynamics, ambiguity is armor. The reason is psychological. Explanation invites judgment. The more people know about your motives, the more material they have to distort or discredit them. In the realm of influence, perception is stronger than truth. The person who speaks too much to defend themselves loses the ability to shape how others perceive them. But the one who remains calm and unreadable forces others to project their own ideas. And those projections are often far more favorable or fearful than reality itself. When you remain silent, people begin to fill the void with imagination, and imagination is the most persuasive force in the human mind. It turns your silence into a symbol of depth, intelligence, or even danger.
There is a Machiavellian elegance in withholding explanation. When people confront you, demand answers, or insist on understanding your choices, the powerful do not rush to appease them. They allow curiosity to work in their favor. The mind hates uncertainty, and in that discomfort, others reveal themselves. They speculate. They overthink. They expose their own insecurities trying to decode yours. In many cases, their imagination becomes their punishment. The quiet man or woman who says nothing becomes the most feared, the most intriguing, and the most respected, because mystery commands attention, and attention commands power. In today's world, this discipline is nearly extinct. We live in an age of oversharing, where people feel compelled to explain every feeling, every mistake, every decision. They rush to justify themselves before anyone even asks. They believe that transparency equals authenticity, when in truth, transparency is often surrender. The more you explain, the smaller you appear, because to explain is to seek approval, to signal that someone else's understanding is required for your peace of mind. But the powerful have no such dependency. They are content to be misunderstood, because they know that silence creates its own gravity. Let them misunderstand you. Let them talk, assume, and speculate, because those who truly see your value never need explanations. They recognize the pattern of strength in your restraint, and those who demand explanations are rarely interested in truth. They only seek control. You owe them nothing. Your actions, your results, and your composure will speak long after your words could have. Silence, in this way, is not emptiness. It's a mirror. It reflects the true nature of others back to them. The insecure will crumble under its weight, mistaking it for rejection. The arrogant will grow anxious, unable to provoke you into revealing yourself. But the wise, they will understand. They will recognize that your silence is not weakness, but mastery. For in the game of power, the one who explains less always controls more. So remember this: you do not owe the world an explanation for your vision, your peace, or your boundaries. Those who deserve to know will understand without words. Those who do not, let your silence be your answer. Because in the end, what cannot be read cannot be controlled. And what cannot be controlled rules everything. 4. The power of controlled silence. Machiavelli's lesson was never about muteness or avoidance. It was about mastery through measured silence. He understood that silence, when wielded deliberately, is not passive.
It's an active tool of control, sharper than argument, stronger than persuasion, and more revealing than words ever could be. Most people speak to relieve tension, to fill the uncomfortable gap of uncertainty. The powerful, however, remain still in that gap. They understand that whoever breaks silence first loses control of the frame. Silence, then, becomes both shield and sword, a calculated absence that directs every presence in the room.
There are three forms of silence that the truly powerful learn to use: defensive silence, offensive silence, and strategic silence. Each serves a distinct purpose, yet all share one core principle. They allow you to operate from strength, not reaction. Defensive silence is the silence of composure, the ability to say nothing because there is nothing to gain from speaking. It's the refusal to participate in emotional traps or impulsive exchanges. You're not running away from confrontation. You're conserving energy for what truly matters. Machiavelli would have admired this form of restraint because it signals discipline. He knew that emotion is the lever others use to move you, and once you react, you give them that leverage. Defensive silence protects your plans, your image, and your peace. When you respond to insult or provocation with calm indifference, you deliver a message more powerful than any rebuttal. You cannot be shaken. This kind of silence is your armor, quiet, impenetrable, and unnerving to those who feed on reaction. Then comes offensive silence, the weaponized form of stillness. This is not retreat, it's psychological warfare. It's when you deliberately withhold reaction to draw information from others. You allow people to fill the silence because most cannot bear its weight. They start talking too much, too fast. They explain, justify, reveal doubts, and expose motives they intended to conceal. The patient observer gathers everything while giving away nothing. Machiavelli would call this the art of appearing less than you are. By saying less, you see more. By revealing nothing, you make others reveal themselves. In conversation, in negotiation, or in conflict, this type of silence flips the balance of power. The person who listens longest controls the dialogue. Finally, there is strategic silence, the highest form of mastery. This silence is not about the absence of speech, but the precision of timing. It is the art of knowing when to speak and when to hold still. You understand that every word spoken too soon loses its power, while every word withheld builds anticipation. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must appear decisive, but they must also be patient, striking only when the moment is most advantageous. Strategic silence operates on this principle. It's the silence before a decision, the pause before a statement, the stillness before a reveal. It's how leaders command rooms, how negotiators secure deals, and how wise men shape destiny. When you speak rarely, your words become scarce, and as Machiavelli taught, scarcity breeds value. Silence, in this sense, becomes punctuation for power. It turns every gesture, glance, and pause into communication. It allows you to control not just what is said, but what is felt. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and conquerors, from Machiavelli's princes to modern visionaries, all understood that restraint amplifies authority, because the less you say, the more the world leans in to listen. So train yourself to use silence not as avoidance, but as strategy. Let it protect you when words would expose you. Let it disarm when confrontation would exhaust you. Let it command when explanation would weaken you. Speak when necessary, but when you do, let every word strike with the force of thunder after the calm.
5. The Machiavellian transformation. So what happens when you truly embody this philosophy? When you never chase, never beg, never explain? You undergo a quiet but irreversible transformation. You stop reacting and start directing. You stop moving to the rhythm of others, and instead, they begin moving to yours. Machiavelli would call this the birth of authority through restraint, the point where you no longer seek control because your very stillness commands it. You shift from being emotionally impulsive to strategically deliberate. The noise of other people's opinions, manipulations, and judgments begins to fade into insignificance. You stop trying to be understood and start being felt. Your words become rare, your actions become intentional, and your silence begins to carry more meaning than most people's speeches. That is when true influence begins, not when you try to convince others, but when your mere presence unsettles or inspires them. Soon, people around you will sense that something about you has changed. They'll notice your calm, your lack of urgency, your indifference to attention. You're no longer provoked by insults or seduced by flattery. You're no longer desperate to be chosen, to be liked, or to explain yourself. And that shift unnerves people because they can no longer predict you. And in a world obsessed with predictability, unpredictability becomes your most powerful armor. People fear what they cannot read. When they can't tell what you think, what you feel, or what you'll do next, they start to behave cautiously around you. They adjust their tone, their words, even their offers, all because your silence keeps them uncertain. That is dominance without aggression, control without force. It is the essence of Machiavellian power, to rule not through fear, but through the perception of mystery. Understand this. Power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't explain. It doesn't beg for recognition. Power stands still and watches others move, revealing themselves, exhausting themselves, betraying their own intentions. The strongest leaders in history understood this truth. They didn't waste energy trying to prove their worth. They conserved it, radiated it, and let others chase the echo of their silence. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said that appearances often matter more than intentions. You don't need to tell people who you are. Your composure speaks louder than any proclamation. Your calm becomes your signal. Your patience becomes your weapon. Your silence becomes your language. And in the end, that's the real transformation. You stop trying to be powerful and simply become it. Because true strength doesn't prove itself, it radiates. The world is loud. Desperate voices chasing validation, explaining, begging to be seen. But you are not here to be another echo in the noise. You are here to become the silence that commands attention, the stillness that makes others adjust their tone when they speak to you, the composure that shifts the energy of any room you enter. When you stop chasing, you become the prize. When you stop begging, you reclaim your dignity. When you stop explaining, you control the narrative. Machiavelli's wisdom was never about cruelty. It was about control. The control of your emotions, your image, and your presence. Silence, when used with purpose, becomes your shield and your sword. So starting today, speak less and observe more. Resist the urge to react. Let your stillness test people's patience and expose their motives. Let your absence increase your value. Because the less you reveal, the more they wonder. And in that wondering, you hold the power. This is your challenge. For the next 7 days, practice intentional silence. Don't chase. Don't beg. Don't explain. Just hold your ground and watch how the world begins to bend around your calm. Because in the end, power doesn't shout. It waits. It watches. It commands. And now, it's your turn to become that power.